Miracle Story, Episode 17. My father was born in 1922, way out in the country. He had one living brother and sister. He had been born a twin, but the other one had either died right after or during childbirth. An interesting side note here that has nothing to do with this story is that my father weighed 11 pounds at birth. I can't imagine carrying two babies around that size and then delivering them way off out in a little country house. Probably much of the reason the other twin did not live. My grandmother was a member of the Church of Christ. The church where they attended was miles from their home, but every Sunday morning and Sunday evening and on Wednesdays, my grandmother walked with my father and his siblings several miles each way to attend. And yes, this was in the Oklahoma heat and in the snow as well. After several years of this, my father had had enough and rebelled against church and therefore God. My grandparents divorced when my father was a teenager and he moved to Arizona to live with his dad. Through the years, as I was growing up, my dad did not want to talk about God or religion. All those years of religious activity had soured him so completely on what he thought was required to be a Christian, that he wanted no part of it. But I prayed for my dad. For years I prayed for my dad. I prayed in the natural and in the spirit. I often just said a simple prayer throughout the day. I would simply say to God, "Please don't let my daddy die before he was right with you." I prayed it over and repeatedly. So when God allowed my intercession to spare my father's life, I knew it was time for more than just prayer. I needed to act. Fast forward this story to when my father was home. He often sat at the end of their dining room table where he had a cup of coffee at the ready. He would watch TV from there. One day, I was at my parents' home and found a large cardboard box of cards that friends and family had sent him while in the hospital. It held dozens upon dozens of cards. I set the box on the opposite end of the dining room table from where my dad was sitting. I looked through them and read the sentiments from friends. I came upon a letter in an envelope that at first didn't look familiar until I pulled the letter out of the envelope and began to read. I didn't realize my father was watching me until I opened the letter and started to read it. Honestly, I was a little embarrassed. As I read the first line, I heard a tapping on the table and looked over to see my father tapping to get my attention. When I looked over, he mouthed to me in his raspy voice, "Sissy, it's okay." I smiled and nodded. To this day, it makes me so incredibly emotional. I firmly believe God allowed my prayers to spare his life so that he could make things right with him. What if I hadn't known what I did? What if I'd not prayed those difficult intercessory prayers? It is wonderful when a physical life is spared, but is there a purpose beyond? In this case, it is a definite yes. Saving his physical body brought him to a place to receive spiritual salvation. God answered the prayers I had prayed all those years where I asked God not to let my daddy die before being born again. But I had a part to play as well, and I am so thankful that I did. I'm so thankful I knew how to intercede in deep intercessory prayer. I am so glad I knew how to fight spiritual warfare on that level. And I am glad, so glad, I wrote that letter to him. What had I said in that letter? I told him that a relationship with God was just that, and not how many times a week you went to church. I told him how much God loved us and just wants us to be close to him. There was much more I wrote because the letter was about 3 pages long, but the other words don't come to mind right now. Our lives and our faith is a journey. Many events and experiences are stepping stones to the next one. Being in a close relationship with God makes that journey substantial and beneficial for now and for all eternity. Thank you for listening. Be sure and subscribe to this podcast, plus my other podcast, The Story with Nancy Jackson, where you will hear the actual professionally narrated novel that syncs with after the story. Link is in the notes.